What's up, all you lovely people out there? Quick note, some cool things are going up on the Patreon. Just for you. A new Broken Chat with Chris Revel. It's our Patreon-only talk show. Chris is the host of Let's Chat with Chris Revel, as you know, frequent guest on the show, and he is coming on to discuss how he is launching his own career into purely podcasting. And what it means to take a leap into a new career and a career change, and some of the things that are there. A little bit less pop culture and a little bit more, self-improvement, humanistic stuff. Also, there is a larger entire segment. You're going to hear a segment of this coming up on the main feed, but Sharon Blady comes on to talk about some of the psychological and cultural implications of K-pop and what that is. It gives me a crash course in that. So you're going to hear that coming up on the main feed a bit, and the entire thing will be up on behind the paywall of the Patreon. We're still moving forward on our book club, organizing that and when we're going to do it. The first book club is going to be open to all Brainiacs, meaning all listeners. You can subscribe to the Patreon without payment if you want, and there'll be some updates and announcements coming through there. So go to www.patreon.com/brokenbrain, and there'll be some more there, including some t-shirts and merch and things that you can access by being a donor, as well as even some it's a controlled cost to take part in some self-study and some participative skills groups that are going to be coming out as well. If you're interested in doing that, you can subscribe, get all the Patreon bonuses, and get access to those for a lower cost than if you just subscribe to them straight through my own practice and such. Thanks for being here. Here is my episode with Sam Led. Here again, you know him, you love him. If you've heard him do his podcast, The Fear Less Now. And you've heard him on here at least twice. If you heard those episodes, you know that Sam is always a very inspirational guy and just brings a lot to internal focus and things such as that. Next week, we're also going to have a special an episode coming up with a music thanatologist who's going to tell us about how music can help to ease and help through the passage from life to death as people pass away. Very fascinating one I've been pursuing for a long time to talk about thanatology. But for now, enjoy the gentle musings and ADHD tangents of two scatterbrained guys who believe in you and believe in your ability to be you and the power that's in that.
The Broken Brain.
Hanging up on you now.
you're only 2 years older than me though. So
yeah, but you remember do you remember in the heyday, Capri Sun was like the
absolutely.
It was now, it wasn't like a teenage thing.
You can't get Ecto Cooler anymore though. That's the thing. They used to have
from the Ghostbusters?
Yeah, they used to have that flavor.
Oh my God, you're taking me back.
I'm going to record
recording
on the
in
computer
progress.
too. That's my backup is the computer recording. I have the other recorder going.
Your magnetic tape recorder with the reel to reel.
Yeah, it's reel to reel. It takes up a whole wall. I can't show you. It won't fit on the screen.
It's like your old when you said sometimes to keep it old school,
that's
you're
right.
really
I mean
that to the next level.
1940s old school,
yes.
I'm in a 1950s NASA nuclear bunker kind of thing,
I knew it. And you have the HAL 9000 in the background.
Just hope it doesn't kill again.
Yeah,
So,
no.
That was the killer computer, right? From space.
Well, there were a couple, wasn't there? Yeah, from 2001.
They all start killing eventually.
Yeah, and then there was the computer in what was the one that killed the humans? Oh yeah, it was Terminator, where they would.
They went,
They literally did.
Or to a better example, even Terminator 2. There you go.
Right, the Rise of the Machines. Was it the Rise Against the Machine?
Yeah. That was 3. That was 3. See, there we go.
All right.
And then they invested further into the Terminator universe by going it. No, I'm just kidding. We won't.
This is
a new Terminator podcast that we're going to launch.
You want to get paranoid? We're kind of, I don't know, there a little bit. Not to make anyone paranoid. You know what movie I was watching? If you really want to reset your brain and get yourself really scared about the future. If you actually watch CNN, which I don't, because CNN is just as bad as what we're saying right now because it's nonsense, is the movie called Threads. Have you seen it?
Threads.
It's a British.
No.
Remember the day? I know we're going off on a total tangent, but there's a movie called Threads, which was based on. Would you remember the day after when we were little kids? It was about nuclear war.
The day after tomorrow or whatever it was. Yeah.
No, it was the day. Well, yeah, it was.
No,
with,
it was a different one. That was
Jason Robards.
Gotcha.
Jason Robards. Okay, that was like vanilla. This movie called Threads. You want to talk about like the machines taking over, and how like nuclear war, just how it happens. That if you, ladies and gentlemen, if you really want to give yourself like a bad Saturday afternoon, so you have nightmares for the rest of the year. Seriously, at 47, this movie was made in late 83. And it's so creepy and it's too real. Yeah. So don't do that, ladies. Don't watch it, please. Just don't watch it. Which I wanted to talk about today, which is great. We scare ourselves to death. We scare ourselves to death and noticing, and just it's in the noticing what's really going on with thought and thinking, which can save all of us a lot of time and money and unnecessary suffering when we think that like we're bipolar or we think we're schizophrenic. And we think we're whatever we are. And again, ladies and gentlemen, do your own discovery. Don't listen to my words, please. Because of the fact that is really true what I'm saying. We've had, again, I mentioned this in a previous podcast, there have been psychiatrists that have become coaches that have shared this understanding with schizophrenics, bipolar 2, schizoaffective people in state hospitals, the worst of the worst. And within like a couple of weeks, they see what we're pointing to, and they say, oh shit, I don't need to listen to the voices. But then of course the intellect will chime in, or the doctor listening to this, therapist listening to say, well, it's not that simple, Sam. No, it is that simple, but we overcomplicate it. And again, don't listen to what I'm saying, because I'm sure everyone listening is going to well, this sick guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Don't worry, this will be on my feed, so they'll take it out on me.
Okay, good.
How do we reach him? That's why I actually have guests give their contact information.
Right.
Their social media presence, and then I do a little outro where I'll say their address too.
Right. And their coordinates and what kind of make and model.
Google Maps links will be in the show notes to Sam, right where Sam is now.
But I mean this I say this out of real love. And compassion for those that are suffering right now, because we've all been down that rabbit hole and it seems real and it feels real. But once like we see like the mind is telling us, weaving us a tale to keep us safe, that it loves us, but it doesn't care how it's going to scare us. Like really doesn't care. And that's where we really need to pay attention in the noticing. And seeing the illusion, no matter how real it feels, and it really feels real to a lot of us, including myself, a lot of the time. And being okay with your psychology, being okay with like flipping out and having, we all go crazy. Just being okay with going crazy, not like crazy in a dangerous way, but I'm just saying going crazy, proverbial, like losing our shit.
It's the feeling of the identity of being broken. I know that's a big one that I know you and I are really very much on the same page. There's this identity and feeling of like, am I a broken person just because I have problems or something?
I felt like that day 2 days ago. Yeah. And 2 days ago, I felt broken because and I was so caught up in it. Like seriously, I had a discovery call the client, and I thought it went well, and okay, new client on the Ross. Great. And then I realized like, it's not like, it doesn't work that way. Like you don't, you present it, you share, and then you just hope that they come back and then retain you. And then my old tape was playing. It's like, well, maybe you said things that were controversial, that maybe you should have not opened your mouth as much. Maybe, the what ifs and feeling just like dysfunctional for no reason. My brain was just going there. And there's no reason. And then I'm like, oh shit.
Well, I got him on the line here. We'll see. We'll see if there's no reason. I have exactly the same. No, this is your life. We're introducing all your clients on the air. No, yes. I have exactly the same thing. It's interesting when you say like a discovery call or a initial contact where it's like, and sometimes there's that part of you that you're just like, I've done both where I've had those moments. I'm on the phone. I'm in the sales mode. I just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
and there's other times where I'm just like, I just answer the phone. I'm feeling like me and I'm just me. And the interesting time is the only time that I've ever had anyone ever really come around and say, hey, when you called me, I felt, like we were going to work well together, is after one of those calls, right? I noticed that over time. In fact, I had somebody once who came in and said, I think if I remember right, you swore a little on the phone when I called in, and I liked that. I knew, it told me you were laid back.
Oh, interesting.
So now I just let
yeah.
it fly. But the self part, not necessarily the profanity.
Right. And the feeling broken part we all experience, whether you are rich or poor, healthy or sick, young or old. I mean, I think but once you see like that's all conditioning, and you can call it a ham sandwich. It doesn't really matter. Like, but it's in the noticing of the mental gymnastics your brain is doing, like in this moment. And you don't have to do meditate. You don't have to, you can label with any kind of psychobabble term. No offense to psychobabble, but because I love psychobabble too. But once you see, like, if you are, again, I'm not diminishing the fact that people are suffering out there, but a lot of the time I just got to be brutally honest. And I don't know what people are going through. It's optional, but then it's okay to suffer. And then we can go into Dostoevsky and go until the Russian, authors that talk about this stuff, and the suffers to suffer and blah, 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 and modes of alienation. But we won't do that because we like some people to listen and not fall asleep or, throw bananas at their screen. But life has got us.
For the Patreon. There's
That's right.
Well, as a feeling, it's actually a really big thing that the feeling and the impetus that comes to us with suffering is, if I touch something hot, I pull my hand away. And with emotional suffering and psychological suffering, a lot of times it's actually the opposite, which is to say, I feel hurt. I should kind of sit in it. I should lean into it even and say, I am having this experience.
That's right.
And I think the hot stovetop example is what we go for, which is, ow, it hurts, I should pull away, right?
Yeah.
And that works on a stovetop. I wouldn't recommend leaning into that one. But the fact is, it's a different dynamic than that burn. To say, if I can try to get around the idea that suffering and the unpleasantness of it means I have to then do something, especially in the immediacy. I mean, it may drive me to make decisions differently, but in the immediacy, to say, I'm hurting, I need to do something right now to stop it. When we're free of that, we make very, we get very interesting insights, and and the funny thing is, sometimes the time period that we sit in it is even less if we don't worry about doing something to get out of it. It's a weird, very counterintuitive sometimes, where it's like,
it feels that way.
Suffer,
It totally feels counterintuitive, because our brain's saying, do something about this. No. Stop stewing in it. Stop, suffering in it. Do something. The brain always wants to get involved in stuff. It always needs to do something. Always. It's the, proverbial helicopter parent. But once we see, like, what's going on now, there's understanding, like, that thought has nothing on us is hard. It's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of us, because a lot of us have a lot of investment in our suffering, in this psychology called the psychology of suffering. And I'm just as guilty of it as the next person. But it did take me like decades to see, like, oh shit, like that's exactly what I've been doing. And I'm going to forget again for a second, but I'm going to remember again. And that's kind of that tango of that middle ground of seeing your psychological innocence when you get caught up and forget, especially like if you in relationships, partnerships, business relationships, it's very human and normal to be upset and get upset about things, or to sometimes dwell on it for a second. But the beauty of it is seeing, like, what is really going on and how thought can contaminate our experience of life innocently. I think that, feelings are the ultimate barometer. And once we see that feelings, when we're feeling really off, overwhelmed, anxious, we have foreboding, when our brain plays fortune teller, which we know it can't do, future fantasy thinking, weaving all kinds of story about the future, creating all kinds of scenarios. It's great if you're like, in the war room and you're playing war games and you actually have objectives but the war games it's playing against yourself is what I'm talking about. And for those of us that have a sniper mind, have a neurodiverse sniper mind, and we have a laser scope, with our thinking, that is what I'm kind of pointing to.
Yeah.
And so when the feelings are really off, that's not there for you to suffer through. It's there to say, Sam, right? Or Bob or Baba Booey, or whoever you are, that you're temporarily off center. Hold on. Keep calm as best as you can. Sit with it. Within an hour, your operating system is going to allow it to reboot, and you're going to come back to well-being again. And once we see like fresh thinking is always moving through us, and that feeling of contentment that we have, like when I'm talking to you and we're doing a podcast, like time just flies out the window. That sense of contentment and ease and presence is our essential nature. And it's not sexy. It's not it's not a Jaguar. It's not some, the drama is what we get addicted to. We condition ourselves to. We create new neural patterns with, if we pay attention to all that drama and forget what our true nature is. And the most powerful gift is that the brain has this built-in self-correcting system and is also saying to us, Sam, it's not time for you to listen to the nonsense. It's 100% made up. That just sit still with it. And even if you got to work or you got to do stuff in life, you still can. You're not going to die. I mean, you still can walk around, even though it feels really. It can feel debilitating and slow you down at times, but that's okay too. Just having the hope that you're going to settle and seeing, like, trusting that life's gotcha. Like, you just have a temporary computer glitch. Like, your essential nature, your blue dot is wellness and well-being, which is the truth. It's a spiritual truth. Jesus, Buddha, and all the heavy hitters in our spiritual world have all been pointing to this. And you and I've spoken about this before. Yeah. But I think just in the noticing is what takes us down to who we are. Because whether we notice it now, our divinity, or we notice it when we cross over into the next world, we see what life's about here, or if you believe in the next world or whatever, that there is this isness, this juicy spot, it's a sweet spot in a tennis racket. I love tennis. I'm too skinny to play anything else besides chess. Racquetball.
Tennis, chess, you get that together and they're really hard to hit. Those the pieces.
Ooh, is it like Frisbee golf? Is there have you ever played that, by the way? Just
yeah, a little. I mean, I'm not very good at throwing it, but yeah.
Terrible.
I'm not good at hitting the things I throw things at. That's kind of key to most sports, but I do enjoy the Frisbee golf thing. Yeah. There's actually just about 5 minutes from where I'm sitting right here. There's a technical college. I actually used to work there as a counselor, but somebody for like a service project or a Boy Scout project or something years ago put a Frisbee golf course right on there. So I could be doing it, 5 minutes after we're off the phone here. I'm
planting the seed.
But I could.
Maybe you need it.
Yeah, yes. Maybe it'll be there. Yeah, I'll be like, wow, why is that in my head?
Can I give you another example?
Sam incepted me into playing
yes.
Yeah, Frisbee golf.
Yes, and the Frisbee golf thing is when my my record goes off into the neurodiverse, ADD world. And it's funny that, ADD is made up too, but neurodiversity isn't.
Well, it's an interesting thing when you talk about it that way, because I hear you say that on the one hand, it's like, well, that this is all things are made up, all labels are made up, right?
Yep.
At the same time, there's an existent thing there that's like, hey, we're off on this now. That has to do with what we call, I guess you could say, what we've labeled ADHD. There's people out there that have come up with different names that are maybe even a little bit more specifically better for the way the brain works. But there is a difference, a diversity, as you put it, in how our brains function.
I think so.
I wonder about in the future how long it will be before some of the things we classify as disorders now are not classified that way, that they're just different ways to think.
Oh, I love that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's actually what I was going to say next. It's like, if you look through the diagnostic statistical manual, there are homosexuality is one, gender, what do you call it? Gender.
I have gender dysphoria.
Gender dysphoria, whatever. Yeah. Something like that.
Sure.
There's so many that, that we've now declassified as in the DSM-5. And I think that is just kind of what I'm pointing to again, is once we're starting to really understand how different minds work, and no two minds are alike. There's no such thing as a neurotypical. Well, someone could say, and a doctor or a psychiatrist or psychologist or whomever can argue that to the cows come home. And if they really understand how mind works, then they would see like there is like a mind that works a little bit differently, whether it works faster or slower. There's so much we don't know, but it doesn't mean it's broken, because there's 119 million of Sam. Thank God there's only one Sam, thank God. But there's 119 other neurodiverse minds out there that have a speedy processor that's, that we've never learned how to use the technology.
Right.
So
well, and for me too, it's like what metric do you use when you say typical? I mean, that's one of the biggest problems, right? We could say, you look at a more straightforward version of this. I always compare this. You have to think of diagnosis as take a whole bunch of people, and you notice eventually, if you just started from day one, we're all humans, we just started existing today, sometime in the next however long, we would notice that some of us don't see as far, and we'd call it, and some of us can focus our eyes on things that are far, but not on what's close. And so all of a sudden we've got nearsighted and farsighted. We can make up those names, and they reflect something in the real world, but they don't encompass all of the nuance. And so as you move forward, well, probably we can figure out what other names for different types of eyesight. And I find eyesight for some reason is a good metaphor for people to wrap their mind around this and say, now take something you can't see and you can't. And for many, they're doing it a little more now with brain imaging and stuff. But for the longest time, we couldn't even see the organ that was supposedly either at failure or functioning differently. And so we've got all this. And so, yeah, when you say typical, like what is typical? Typical means is if we use the mathematics statistical term, it means average. Well, what's the metric of average? What are we studying? Are we studying? Because for so long, I think mental health has been in the camp where it's like, well, you're average if you don't make us feel weird. If you're making everybody feel awkward, then you're crazy,
Exactly. So, and I love it. I love what you just said there, because there is no metric. We're making the metric up. Literally making the metric up, and who knows what they're using as the baseline. I don't know, but see, this is the thing. It's really not that our intellect overcomplicates everything, and a lot of our well-meaning clinicians and researchers out there, God bless their hearts, are overcomplicating stuff. Because it's not their fault. They're being conditioned, just like, you're a therapist. You've been trained in a certain way, but you also have a brilliant mind. You also have your conscious self. You have this spiritual default state that we all have. That's a fact. That's a spiritual truth. It's more fact than science. Science behind science is spirit. Mm-hmm. But it's more fact than these guys in white lab coats. It's more fact than the DSM-5, that we have this essential nature to us, to all of us, whether you believe in God or not, a higher power, Jobu,
Joe Boo.
Remember Joe Boo? Ladies, Gen Xers will kind of bow their head and yes.
A moment of silence for Joe Boo.
Joe Boo.
You get little insights of that too. It's interesting how, as you're saying that, it hits little things that you can see. DBT, very popular therapy method for a lot of personality disorder issues.
Disorders, yeah.
Nowadays, and they have the concept of a wise mind. in there, right? You look at, which is essentially what you just said, which is there's a well of inspiration or of guidance or wisdom, as
Yes.
Linehan calls it, right, inside of us. And then it also hit me with logotherapy. Look at Viktor Frankl.
Like the
I was
Frankl.
saying, like inspire or inject meaning into something, and it becomes more tolerable. Or you look at I'll pull out, Carl Rogers, unconditional positive regard, a big, huge part of it, which is essentially just saying if someone feels supported and nice, they're going to start to self-heal, which is another version of what you're saying, actually. So you see these elements of like, there's this self-healing wisdom internal or access to a spiritual kind of a thing that it's very hard when people do try to quantify it. They come up with some part of their theory that's just kind of like, yeah, groovy. And they try, we try to quantify it, intellectualize it more than that, but there is just a groovy internal self-healing part of us that's there.
And you can call it heal. I mean, what I share with my clients is that there's nothing to heal. There's nothing to fix.
Talk about that.
Because it's thought. It's thought. Ladies and gentlemen, grief is thought. And there's nothing wrong with grieving. We all do it. But once we can be okay with our human psychology of grieving, of going through that process, you don't need to heal grief. You don't. We don't need to heal the past because it's the past. That's not a reality. That's reality we were in. And I say that with a little bit with passion, because how much more time are people going to spend on financially and otherwise, and time lost on grieving, getting stuck? And we all have gone. I mean, I've been very depressed. I've gone stuck. And then I look back and I'm like, oh my God, all the time I wasted that I can't get back. Like, the less we care about what's on our mind, literally, the less you care about what's on. I've walked around yesterday, I'm so anxious for no reason. I'm like, why the hell am I anxious? Everything's fine. Literally, everything's fine. It was 87 degrees here yesterday. Like, I'm healthy. Like, I did, I have stuff's going on. Great stuff's happening. I have income. Thank God. I have a wonderful partner. The more we
yoga, surfing, bean sprouts.
Thanks for producing me to a California Erewhon stereotype. I can't do yoga. I don't have the attention span for yoga. I've tried it and I've pissed off I think I pissed off the yoga instructor, because I'm like, dude, what do you like? I remember like raising my hand in the middle of one of the poses. I'm like, what are you talking about? What is this stuff? Impulsively,
and they're like, stop moving, the goat is going to fall off your back. And I assume it was goat yoga. Once again,
it was goat yoga.
California. Mm-hmm. But no, I was doing it out of envious. I don't know why I picture you on a surfboard most of the time. Actually,
you're in Utah. It's gorgeous. Like, you just have to look outside, nice. Yeah. And it's like a Technicolor landscape. It's like it's like a Bob Ross painting. It's pretty cheap. But the less we care about what's on our mind, the less we care about what you have on your mind or what's on your mind. And people are going, again, the intellectuals will come out and say, well, it's not as simple as that, Oh. Well, yeah, it is, because the illusion that somehow that's what's true. It doesn't matter if you're going back, if you're like, you can't figure out how to pay rent tomorrow and that's what's on your mind. And it's like, really, you're suffering it. Okay, you're still suffering in it. But this is the thing. This is the alchemical gold, is you'll know what to do. Like, you'll know what to do. Whether you are kicked out of your apartment because you're being evicted, God forbid, or whatever it is, you'll know what to do at that moment. We don't trust we need to start trusting ourselves in that moment that you'll know what to do. Like, I had no idea what I was going to talk about before our podcast. Maybe who knows? But then I started typing things down on my my notepad here. Mm-hmm. But you will know what to do, ladies and gentlemen. Like, it's you got to trust it. It's like, for people that are coaches out there or therapists out there, the best ones, you can't pre-plan a coaching call. The best thing you can do is just to check in with yourself. Say, okay, what's on board, Sam? You got a lot of noise going. Okay. You got a lot of stuff in the periphery. Is really to get present with yourself and then to see what comes up and to get really curious with your clients.
Self-trust is an interesting concept when you what you just
Self-trust.
said,
There we
right.
go.
Yeah,
I just spin a lot of sentences. You just like self-trust. Self-trust.
No,
Jeez.
it's interesting though, because this is something I think about a lot. I think anxiety, especially when we get into what I call it the therefores. We get into okay, if
The yeah
here's
buts.
yeah, there you go. That's probably good. Maybe that's
Yeah.
yeah. It's like this is probably going to happen, so therefore I'll have to do this, and therefore I'll have to do this, and therefore I'll have to do this, and therefore. And now I'm spending my energy and I'm burning all these mental calories trying to figure out what am I going to do when I get to the fifth therefore that may never even happen because the first one may never happen, or if the first one does happen, I'll probably do something different than what I think I'll do while I'm thinking of the therefores right now. And so when we're caught in that type of thinking, we are the opposite. We are distrusting ourselves at that point and saying, I won't be able to handle it, so I've got to figure it out right now of what I'm going to do when all these things play out. And then it turns out they often don't, or they don't play out the way we think they will. And so investing instead in the thought process of, I'll have to figure that out if it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it's
smart.
but all of you are, it's not the intellect that's gonna get you to that place of contentment and to knowing what to do next. The intellect, again, and we've spoken about this before, is the intellect's great to get you to the date, to meeting your future wife, spouse, or long-term relationship partner. It's great. It's think of it as Magellan GPS. The intellect's great for doing quadratic equations, which I hate. It slams against its own proverbial limitation wall when you're trying to kind of use your intellect to find solutions to your problems, because we don't know what to do when we're caught up here in our head, in our intellect. And that's why, and again, from where I'm sitting here in Santa Barbara, and that's why and again, I'm going to get flack for this. If you're relying on therapy to heal you, you're going to, again, slam up against that proverbial wall of the intellect. If you're relying on any kind of modality to calm your mind down, you're using your intellect the wrong way. You will never, ever, and again, ladies and gentlemen, do your own discovery. Don't listen to my words, but try this on for size. Try trusting yourself. You don't need to figure any of this out. It's factory pre-installed equipment. It's original equipment, OEM manufacturer stuff from birth. When we come into this world, into the physical, we have this built into us. And when we leave this world, we have this built into us. This is our essential nature. This is the impersonal. But when we rely on thought, when we rely on the intellect to find solutions to our problems, we're going to be bumping against our experience, because our brain is only as good as what you put into it. That's it. It's what the tape recorder is whatever you're feeding that hard drive, you can't get out what you don't put into it. And so it's gonna happen. And once I saw that, with all like my labels of me, like Sam's ADHD, he's got a diagnosis, OCD. I mean, seriously, the DSM. I'm the DSM-5 a poster boy. No, what do you call it? Like, I get the gold star. I don't know what you call it.
The sampler platter is usually what we call it.
The poo-poo platter, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you get enough of them, then you get frequent flyer miles with. You can only change them in for more.
See what we discovered.
For more diagnoses, though.
I wouldn't.
Well, some
they
people
should do
don't.
that.
Yeah, you don't. You have to listen to Erica because she reads the fine print, so we don't have to. That's an Instagram thing. Never mind.
That's an Instagram thing.
But it just keeps showing up in my feed. Those people that read fine print. So the fine print is if you get enough DSM diagnoses, you get the next one for free. Nobody tells you ever that, but no, I absolutely. And within the concept of that different neurodiversity, what if I am a person whose brain functions in an ADHD way, for shorthand? Or what if I am a person who has maybe a hair trigger on some of my anxiety responses? If I'm a person who has trauma or is in the vasal nerve a lot of the time, the fight or flight, then you throw on, so that this practice you're talking about of that sort of
It's
self-trust.
not a practice.
This,
Not a practice.
yeah. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah,
It's who we are, but it's who we
I know
are.
that's a yeah. I didn't mean to step on. That's
because it's important to know
against methodology, right?
I'm not against anything. I'm not against anything. I mean, if you want to eat a ham sandwich, go ahead. That's fine. What I'm against is not having an open mind.
Yeah.
And getting really curious and not thinking that modalities or any of that's going to work for you.
Would you say approach then?
I would say we have our thing called humanness, right? We have our quirks and features. We've gone over that ad nauseum since we've been talking.
Sure.
And it's been a labor of love for me to stumble all over myself, just like we all have in this world, and then find myself. We see glimpses of our essential nature all day long. We just don't pay attention to it. Okay. We have a system that we know. Scientists know this. Guys in white lab coats and sitting behind really neat desks with number 2 pencils. I don't know. Throw on modalities is layering a system that doesn't need fixing. Like you have a built-in self-settling system, thought settling system. It's the TSS system that will, if you allow it to, no acronym, that's right. If you allow it to, you will settle on your own. And we do that anyways. But we have such a hyper-vigilant helicopter parent of a brain that we think that's truth. In the calm, we can't trust. But we have it backwards. We think that we're living through this external reality called reality, outside reality, our outside world, thinking that somehow that's what's causing us to feel that way. Well, we've been conditioned to think that way, but in reality, we have it backwards. We're not living through that outside reality. We're living in a world of 100% of thought. We're living a thought-based reality. And once we see that we have a narrator that's constantly scripting and narrating, creating our reality, then it's a lot easier to hear what I'm pointing to.
Mm-hmm. So it's more of a, what do you call what you do? More of a philosophy, would you say? Not
understanding. It's how it works. It's how the system really works. Yeah. It's how we really work as humans. It's how our mind really works. This is how the equipment works. It's not like a philosophy or a perspective. This is how it really works. That we are not the sum total of our thinking, that we live in a world 100% composed of thought that's guiding us along this proverbial river of life, that if we pay attention more to our presence, to our essential nature, to who we really are, then we'll be able to see and notice what's fact from fiction, what's truth from what's the illusion. And the greater the drama we have that we think is drama, that's being scripted by I don't know, name your favorite screenwriter, who's your favorite screenwriter? Do you like
Christopher Nolan? Let's go with him.
Ooh, okay. If you have Christopher Nolan behind that's scripting your daily, that's brilliant, by the way. If you have Christopher Nolan or what's his name from Reservoir Dogs and True Romance?
Quentin Tarantino
scripting your daily, your every second of every minute of every hour of your daily, of your day behind the scenes. We have this inner narrator, the scripting. Then you got to ask yourself, am I a screenwriter? Should I take this stuff and put it into a screenplay, or am I gonna actually believe this made up shit? Mm-hmm. I'm going to go for B. I'm actually going to forget sometimes and believe the Christopher Nolan screenplay that my brain is scripting in real time because it thinks it's going to keep me safe because it wants to keep us alive, and it doesn't care if it's throwing all kinds of doom and gloom story, auto tragedy, when it just has to do with too many unpaid parking tickets and our cars will get clamped.
And you use the term helicopter parent, right? It's the same thing of like, if I think that the world is going to be harsh to my kids and my solution is never let them outside, I might have to convince them that it's even worse than it is. And I might have to scare them, and I might have to, right? And there's all these like terrible behaviors that might come out that come from this basic overprotective parenting perspective. Right. You're talking about how our mind does that, right?
Our mind does that, and it doesn't care. Your mind loves you, but it doesn't know the difference between. It's the same stimulus response. whether you have unpaid parking tickets, you can't pay them, and your car is going to be either towed or clamped, and you need the car to get to work and pick up your kids. The brain's going to throw out the same kind of, neurochemicals, or the same as being chased by a guy with a knife. Mm-hmm. Same kind of, noradrenaline. And the same thing happens with the butterflies when we meet someone that we're sexually attracted to, and there's all that stuff. It turns into that. It's what can be trusted is the calmness, is this. Look for a feel-good feeling, ladies and gentlemen, not the dopaminergic feel-good feeling, but more like the sense of contentment. Mm-hmm. Like I'm on this podcast right now with you, and I'm just content to be here present with you. Even though I was 10 minutes late, it's still like.
But 1 month early, so hey, it works.
But 1 month early. 30 days. How many hours and minutes? Yes.
Yeah.
So,
it's just about 30 days, 23 hours, and 50 minutes early. It just depends how you look at it.
Hey, look, who's counting? But for me and for all you listening, this is not some fluff. This is not this is not a self-help kind of nonsense. I thought it was and trust me, I fought it. Like, I'm like, what is this crap? Like this, my intellect was fighting it. I knew all along. It's like, we see glimpses of it all day long. Like yesterday, on my break, I went on a run by the beach, and I saw things I'd never seen before just by being present. Like I saw like what I never paid attention before. What are those birds that run really fast? Not puffins, but the tiny little birds on the beach. They all run in formation.
What's a beach? No, I'm just kidding. But I know
it's a piece of land with lots of sand on it, but that's not important right now. And there's water on the other side of it that crashes against it.
Wow, I'd love to see this someday. No, there's those little skinny-legged birds that'll yeah. I don't
like
know
cartoon characters. Me either. But those, I just noticed how they run in formation. And how they just miss being drowned by being overtaken by the water. They go in, they eat, they find their food, they catch their kill, whatever, they catch their whatever, and then they run out in formation out as the shore is breaking, and they miss being overtaken by the wave by like, I don't know.
I think they're the birds that you can see in the Pixar short film Piper.
Yes.
Remember that one? Yeah.
Yes, God.
That was the wave thing that reminded me of it when you said that, because the little bird is
yes,
knocked over by the wave.
And they trust that. But think about it. They through tens of thousands of years, they've trusted that sequence, like that they run in, they get their food, and then they all run out together, and they do the same thing every time. They trust that, just like we trust that we're going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be the sun coming out. We trust that gravity is not going to disappear tomorrow. But why don't we trust that our thinking is going to settle when we're really anxious or when we're really depressed?
Solve whatever problem presents itself.
Yeah, life's got us. Like the less we care about what's on our mind, and that's hard. Listen, I'm not saying like people are suffering. People were coming out of. I mean, I don't know. Are we in a pandemic? I don't know. We're in a post-pandemic. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. Like people could say, well, you have no idea what my life's like. You have no idea what I've been through. I said, I probably don't. And I'm sure a lot of it's been difficult. However, give yourself the gift of what you've been gifted to from day one of your life.
Well,
calmness.
I think that this sometimes is part of the problem when people dismiss, let's say, when people dismiss being in the present, or they dismiss whatever name you want to give it, mindfulness or whatever, whatever makes it more meaningful to someone. When they dismiss it, they say, well, it's not realistic, or it's fluff,
right,
or whatever. But I think one of the most important parts of it is it's not a message. At least I don't hear this in your message. Like you're reducing suffering by by the focus and whatever, you're reducing the suffering that you might be going through, but you're not changing the situation. You're not saying,
No.
oh, if you are more, if you're in this acceptance mode and you're just kind of trusting yourself, then all of a sudden you won't be thrown out of your apartment because you can't pay rent tomorrow. No, actually you might, but you're probably going to deal with it better if you trust yourself, right? And if you go with that, you're not saying, oh, you won't, your cancer will go away. No, it might kill you, but you will have a different time between now and then. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's not a message of it isn't a message of fluff that everything will just be okay if you have the right mindset. A lot of things aren't okay, but it's just trying to deal with them as they happen.
And it's saying, like, my uncle, by marriage, was my aunt's husband, who was very close to, who's also a therapist. He passed away about 7 months ago from complications from leukemia. But in between, like, even the last couple of weeks, even the last couple of days, there were moments when he was cracking jokes, like laughing, just present. Well, if he had terminal cancer and he knew he was going to die, yet he had lots of moments of laughter and pain, physical pain, I'm sure. That's kind of a hint of what I'm pointing to. Like, I'm going to give you another example. For me, I vacillate on and off being phobic driving on the freeway, and I love driving, which is even more frustrating, right? So for months I would go driving on the freeway, no problem. And then for months I couldn't, I for some reason I get caught up in my thinking, but then I'd get on the freeway and still be really anxious driving anyways, breathing, in and out, in and then out through my nose, and just trying to be as present as I can, putting in a piece of music that I love. And I'm still anxious, but then all of a sudden I just drop in and calm, right? The people that are terrible fears of insects and phobias of all kinds of stuff, but they're not phobic all the time. Because they drop into the present moment. If, ladies and gentlemen, if you can notice what I'm talking about more so, just in the noticing, you don't have to do anything. Complicate it less by just noticing, like, you being alive in this moment, and just noticing, like I did yesterday with these silly cartoon-like birds doing what they do every day. And they're not afraid of death. They're not afraid of just disappearing forever. They're essentially as present as they will ever be, just like all of us have that opportunity to see that. And then when we get caught up and we forget who we are, be okay with that too. What I mean by is you're never going to beat the system. It's not like, it's like, I just discovered the meaning of life. And then you get run over by a truck. Remember the scene, one of my favorite shows, is 6 Feet Under. It's one of the greatest.
I remember it, but I never got into it. I didn't ever see it. So.
Okay. So I'm going to just not finish the story, but there's like,
no, go ahead. Spoiler alert for everyone out there.
It's an old show. It's brilliant. It's with, what's his name? The British actor.
He's the guy who played Sherlock Holmes on that one Elementary or whatever, right?
Did he? Yeah.
I think so.
C. Thomas.
He was also in Hackers. I think that's where
he was in Hackers. He's been in a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like you find that you just kind of after decades of suffering, thinking that, like, because of the economics of your life is the reason why you're suffering. And then one day you wake up to, like, oh wait, no. It's optional, and I can still have well-being amidst my problems. And then you get run over by a truck, or so. My point is, ladies and gentlemen, but your life's a gift.
Like, even categorizing that as some sort of a failure is kind of buying into the what you're saying, right?
The narrative,
right? Is to say, hey, if I discovered it and 10 seconds later the truck comes, that was a great 10 seconds. No, but I mean, that sounds like a reframe there, I guess. But and the other thing too that people resist when you talk about this is saying, well, it's not realistic. I have to plan. But it's okay to plan. But sure. I think that the difference is, are you planning something purposefully, or are you doing it because anxiety or external pressures make you do it. And because when I'm doing it because I'm worried, I do it badly. When I do it because it's like, yeah, I am, this is a worry, a concern. I do have to figure out this financial thing or this thing or that thing, but I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it right now. I can do it in the present because I'm doing it right now. It's when it's in the back of my mind while I'm trying to enjoy that drive or avoid that truck or whatever it is that I'm doing in the moment. It's a pretty bad problem if you're thinking about while there's a truck bearing down on you. Like,
right. What I guess my point is that, ladies and
but
gentlemen,
you know what I mean.
Exactly. Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, the gift that we were all blessed with is right there in front of you. Regardless of what station of life you're in, or how rich or poor you are, or how sick or healthy you are, life's a contact sport. You're going to get your knocks, you're going to have your challenges. But once you see like the game the brain's playing, also like it doesn't have to be, suffering is really optional. And once you start arguing with me about that, when people are hearing this and saying, well, you have no idea what my life's been like and how much I've suffered, I know that they're arguing with their intellect and not with their conscious self. And I wanted to read this real quick because this is from the book, The Missing Link, kind of brings it all together. That like,
I was going to ask how that was going. So that's where we're right.
Okay. But what we're made of, like what we're really made of is it's so beyond comprehension. Like the mind can't even wrap its arms around it. The brain's doing the best job it can with what it has on board. But once we see like that we're dealing with old equipment and we were born not knowing how to use the equipment correctly because we've been conditioned to use equipment backwards, and looking at thought and feeling as something that holds true, that's a truth that actually means something, when in reality it's just kind of the barometer showing where we are, if we're off center or not, in terms of how far away we are from who we are. Not to say, like, again, as I mentioned earlier, we put so much meaning on the difficult things we've gone through versus what's in front of us right now in this moment on a Saturday at 10 o'clock California time, that we literally are wasting our time and making ourselves sick. And I think that, especially in this pandemic, or where what would you call it? A pandemic?
I still just call it a pandemic. I don't know that it's really declining yet. The numbers don't decline. So
numbers don't decline. Yeah. It's but still,
we've got some successes and things that are good to celebrate, but I just call it pandemic because I think
pandemic. Okay. Pandemic. Okay.
That's me.
So this is from the book called The Missing Link. It was written by Sid Banks. So they call Sid Banks, you call him the Scottish mystic. He was a very, very normal kind of blue collar guy who had this kind of enlightenment experience. He didn't travel to Kathmandu, or he was a welder from British Columbia, but he was originally from Scotland. And literally, when he was on the job, he had this experience. But we all have this experience every day. We just don't pay attention to it enough. And we all have enlightenment within us. We just don't pay attention to it. Mental health lies. I'm going to read this from it just very briefly. Mental health lies within the consciousness of all human beings, but it is shrouded and held prisoner by our own erroneous thoughts. This is why we must look past our contaminated thoughts to find the purity and wisdom that lies inside our own consciousness. When the wise tell us to look within, they are directing us beyond the intellectual analysis of personal thought to a higher order of knowledge called wisdom. And once, ladies and gentlemen, you see like all the amazing things that happen in your life, falling in love, doing a podcast, talking to this handsome dude 700 miles away in Utah. Yes. Looking with the nice. The pink microphone.
I wasn't sure which handsome dude you're referring to, me or you. So I was waiting to see.
Both of us. Once you see like how amazing this moment is, you'll have more compassion for yourself when you do get caught up, and compassion for others when you're around people, like, when you're in relationships and there's argument and people are pointing fingers at each other, understand that it's nothing on you. that you can have compassion for the other person and you can have compassion for yourself, because it is thought. And there's no yeah, but after it. There's no, well, but no, there isn't. It's who you are is wow. Like, but the problem is, since all of us are enlightened and we're all perfect underneath the contamination of our thinking, that means that, we all got to look at each other from a different perspective, which is not through the contamination of our momentary judgments and critical analyses and compartmentalizing, etc., but through the lens of love. And I know that sounds sanctimonious and very California-esque.
But there's the cynicism. I mean, cynicism is what makes us feel like we can't say things like that, right? Or the anticipation of that it's just silly. It's like, no, it's pretty powerful. Yeah.
And leave it for the comics to make fun of us using their own, the theater of their own comical cynicism. Because again, whether you notice this now, ladies and gentlemen, or you notice it when you move on to transition over into if you believe in that, to the next life or the next world or whatever, who knows what's over there, you'll see what the meaning of life is. And it's right there, right in front of you. And it doesn't mean that you're going to win the lottery tomorrow. And it doesn't mean you're going to be driving a Mercedes, but it means that you could have a nicer, gentler, calmer existence.
Wow. Cool. Well, before we run, tell everybody where to find you. Not the details and the coordinates that I'm going to send them, but like online,
mailing address.
Where do they look you up? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, sir. And thank you for having me. And hopefully I didn't talk over every word that you shared.
No, that's what editing. No, not at all. I really, one of the things I actually really enjoy is that when you are on, there's a lot. I feel like even from the very first time we recorded together, I feel like we have a natural give and take with each other, and we kind of get each other while we're talking.
It's nice,
I
isn't
enjoy
it?
that. That's one of the things I like about podcasting in general is the people I get to meet, but those connections. So yeah, absolutely.
We have a natural rhythm. Some people might hate it, and you'll get the hate mail, and I'll send them your address.
Right. Yeah.
PO Box 365.
Nice.
Somewhere no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But yes, so you can find me on Instagram. It's Sam Led Consulting. You kind of get an idea of the nature of my work. Mm-hmm. And those of you that are interested in kind of discovering more what I'm pointing to, go check out my podcast too, to give you understanding of what I do. It's the Fearless Now. Sam Led Consulting is Instagram, Facebook's the same thing, or my website. It's samledconsulting.com. And I'd love to sit down over a proverbial cup of Zoom coffee at our, who knows what we'll discover. And I think that's what the beauty is of this work, whether you're a therapist, a coach, or whatever. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say this wholeheartedly, is that don't listen to what I have to say, do your own self-discovery. That's my disclaimer, because it's true. You'll see what I'm pointing to, and I don't claim to know everything, because then that would be kind of counterintuitive what I'm pointing to. But get curious about what's going on in your mind at this moment, like when it's torturing you or you think it's torturing you.
Thank you for listening to the Court and Parts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court and Parts shows, visit courtandarts.com.